This is a pretty cool thing we're about to discuss. A friend of mine runs a business called Home Shopping Network, HSN. Mindy Grossman, she is a very effective CEO. I think we got to try to get her here next time, maybe in Chicago, when we do that conference coming up, I believe at the end of June. And Mindy has a saying when she brings people on air to sell products. She says, you need a great product, you need a great story, and you need a great storyteller. You know, it used to be when we wanted to get to know a product, we go to the website, right? And maybe there were some FAQs, frequently asked questions, and we'd sort of, you know, educate ourselves that way. There might be pictures, and so we'd sort of look at that and try to figure it out. In some cases, there might even be video. But how can we actually get more involved? How can we actually interact with the products? That's exactly what the company called Kaon, whose CEO is our next guest, does specifically for companies. It helps create 3D modeling that can be viewed on any device so that now you're suddenly interacting with this product that you're trying to get to know. And as we know from a number of different studies, not the least of which from live chat, when you use interactive video on your website, you increase sales by 88%. That's powerful. That's Gavin Finn, CEO of Kaon. He's going to tell us about it.
All right. Thank you. So this is a pet project of mine, and you're here because I was at a conference, and I was watching a demonstration of your stuff, and I called Thomas immediately. I said, you got to get these guys up. You know, at trade shows, I've spent millions of dollars to haul equipment. I've spent $185,000 to move one machine from the back of the hall to the front of the hall, just to move the machine, $189,000. And I saw your software and I said, this revolutionized what I would have spent. Talk to me about, and we're going to show a couple of examples so people can see the product and so forth as we go. And you've got some folks out here. This isn't I'm not meant to be a commercial, but I know it's going to be a commercial, but I want people to bear with me because I just saw something that I went like, I can save millions of dollars just by having this. How's that for an endorsement?
Well, it's a great introduction. There's a technical term for what you just said. It's called drayage. That's why it's so expensive.
It's drayage. Exactly right. That is the term, or union fees, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, in essence, because it's, I call it, actually, I used to call it a shakedown, because I just thought it was
extortion, right?
Absolutely ridiculous. It just was ridiculous. Talk to me about what you do and describe it.
Well, the reason we're in business is because of companies like your experience shows. When you have an expense like that of shipping big products around, moving them around, that expense goes out the window. It's not an investment. There's no return on that investment. In fact, usually when you bring products to trade shows, they're not even functional at the trade show. They're just there. People are looking at them, right?
Yeah, and I've been in those situations where people actually got someone inside feeding sheets of paper through manually to make it look like it's working.
Exactly. Right? The reality is that what people really want is they want to see what that product is going to do for them.
In an application, and how it's being used, right?
Exactly. So just looking at it from the outside doesn't necessarily help them understand why it's better. And if you ask key executives, sales and marketing executives all over the world, what their #1 sales challenge is, it's articulating their unique value differentiators. Right. And you're not going to get that from just looking at a product. So what you have to be able to do is give people an interactive experience with those products so that they themselves can understand, how is it going to help me? Now, the beauty of the new technologies that have evolved is that you don't have to bring those physical products, you can bring these digital products. And that means that not only is that an investment that's going to pay off because every one of the salespeople is going to have it, every trade show is going to have it, and you don't have to reinvest that money.
Well, I think what I like about that, Gavin, I'm just picking up and I get excited about this, it also means I don't have, let's say I've got 770 salespeople, I don't have 770 different versions of how to do it. Now, the training's always important, don't get me wrong about that, but I can actually show it and doing it in a different way to sequence it, right? Exactly. So that it shows those key highlights.
That's exactly right. And you know, everybody, the constituents all have different needs. The salespeople have the need to be able to show all of their products so that the right product for the right customer at the right time. Marketing has the need you just elucidated, which is to be able to have clarity of their message consistently, no matter which salesperson is presenting the product. So you may be great at a particular product set, but somebody else in Germany may be really good at a different product set.
Right.
You want to really combine the best of all of your sales teams so that everybody has that expertise at their fingertips. And that's the kind of capability that evolves with this kind of technology.
Can you do it in such a way where I can just send it to the customer rather than a salesperson, or is it best to have the salesperson utilize or have someone utilize the software to be able to show the different examples?
You know, to really work, you have to be able to work in both those environments, because customers do a lot of their own research today, right? They're on the websites, they're doing their own research, and they're only really talking to sales and marketing executives from the company when it's the right time in the buying cycle. So you need to give customers that experience as well, which means you have to build these applications in such a way where it's intuitively obvious. How much of the user manual did you read when you used your phone for the first time?
Absolutely none of it.
Well, that's exactly the same experience you need to be able to give with these applications. You'll be able to give it to your customer, have them be able to interact with it, and learn what they need to learn about your product without you telling them about it.
Do you think this replaces like a trade show? I mean, where I would typically go and see the product. Let's say I used to sell these massive printers bigger than the stage,
yeah.
$4 million for those printers. Again, $189 just to get it there, not to mention what it cost me to get the machines there, right? And then an inventory out of process. I got a $4 million machine that's basically a demo sample,
exactly.
right? Do you think it eliminates that, and then to the ability where I can either now send them a link or walk them through a WebEx?
Well, here's what it does. It doesn't eliminate the trade show, but it eliminates those unqualified leads that come from the trade show, because beforehand, they're going to see the products through this interactive experience on the web. While they're at the show, they're not going to be able to see just one of those massive printers. They're going to see the entire product line. So they're going to be much more effective. And then post-show, you're going to actually know which customers are interested in which product, so they're much better qualified leads. So it turns out that you will reduce your costs of going to those trade shows, but you'll also, at the same time, increase the effectiveness.
And your participation of having people involved, especially, and I get that, because I did do that at one show. I said, we're not taking any equipment, and we set up, you know, virtual demonstrations, and I made it look like a printing press, and you could do different things. But it was mostly more for the gimmick. This was a much different experience. I mean, I could actually see it. I could rotate. I could go in. I could open up the. I'm really excited, as you can tell, about this, because I just thought this was so unique. I had never seen anything like that. Is it that unique to you, or are there other people who are also doing that?
Well, we have some really unique capabilities, including the realism of the way that these products look. And one of the things we've learned about marketing and sales in these very expensive kind of product sets, like those big printers, is putting
or an oil refinery,
or an oil refinery, or a big oil rig, or something like that. If it looks fake, if it looks like a cartoon, the actual emotional connection doesn't happen, right? So one of the capabilities.
So if I see a Cookie Monster, you know, it's probably not real. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a good clue.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. So what you really want to do is you want to create a connection on 3 different levels. One is you want to have a sensory connection, so people are actually interacting. The other is you need to have an intellectual connection, so that I'm actually transferring some useful information. And the third is you have to have an emotional connection. And that's where this fun emotional connection comes in, and that's why it really works. Think about it this way. If you go to a trade show and somebody has a really cool game in their booth, and you play the game, and you leave, you say, I had a really great time. Most of the time, you're not going to remember which booth it is, or what their products are, right? So they had that cool experience, but you didn't have those 3 elements. And that's really what we bring, is the ability to bring not only this intellectual knowledge transfer, but have it be a great, engaging experience.
So you're mentioning things that I'm not thinking of that I need to go deeper in. Whereas I'm like on a real one plane, you're going much deeper into things that you're doing. Is that part of a consulting service that you provide as well? With that says, hey Jeff, you need to think about the texture. You need to think about the feeling. I almost get the feeling you're going to be pumping in smells as well.
Exactly. Well, it's all kinds of sensory experiences. Yeah. It's touch, it's sight, it's audio, it's video, and it's smells as well.
You even get to the point where you can also make the machine vibrate.
Right. You can get them to the point where they feel like they're the real thing.
Do you add sound as well with this?
Absolutely, and in the right circumstances. Now, in some trade shows, you can't. The ambient noise is so great you can't really hear it.
You can't do that.
But if you've got a one-on-one sales meeting, or if you've got a customer in their office or at home, you absolutely can include.
Who are the primary audiences that you see utilizing this type of? First of all, who are the earliest adopters? That'd be the first thing I'd ask.
So the earliest adopters are these those big high-tech companies that wanted to differentiate themselves because all of their products look exactly the same. And they wanted to say, it's not what it looks like, it's what's inside. Well, guess what? You're at a high-tech trade show, Cisco and EMC are not going to let you open these things up and take out the cards and all of that. These are million-dollar boxes or multi-million-dollar boxes. So their differentiators are completely invisible. So this was for them the first time they had the capability to actually demonstrate their real differentiated value. And they were allowing customers to open up their boxes, look at the configurations, be able to see what the key differentiating points of value were. And that was a breakthrough for those big high-tech companies. But now it's also in scientific and medical devices where you've got exactly the same problem. Imagine
well, you can get down into the operating table or into a machine and this component part. I see the other practical applications are beyond just the selling, is in supplies and reorders and so forth. I mean, I can remember, and it's a very simple thing, but knocking the tail light of my Kubota four-wheeler out and then trying to find the schematic grid. This would have been a really cool thing to be able to do, hover on it, click on it, and then be able to order it, right?
And you know what the beauty is? That once you create these first, we call them master models, you can use them for all of these other applications without having to rebuild those models. So if you build it for a sales and marketing purpose, you can then use it for service and support, for diagnostics, and for sales training, for customer training. Some of the big users of these are actually delivering these applications with their physical product to the customer so that the customer can learn how to use them.
Very much, but also much like a user manual or anything else, right?
Exactly. In a way where they're not going to break the machine if something goes wrong, but it's a very easy to learn kind of environment.
Well, because there are some applications. I mean, those big printers I talked about, if you hit a wrong button, one time I leaned up on the machine, shut it down for a whole day. That's not a good thing. That's when we designed a redesign of that button. Was on the spot. What's the cost of this, of doing a normal kind of input? And it's tough to say normal because you have different
depends on the
applications.
thing. But think of it as basically the same as what a video would cost, right? So you're doing a very complex video, it's basically the same sort of cost level. But they range anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 to sometimes $200,000 for the application.
Really? See, now I actually would have thought it would have been much more expensive.
Yeah, they're not that expensive. And the reason that they're that contained in terms of the initial investment is because they're built incrementally. So you would start, if you look at that oil field, for example, you'll start with one element of it, or one product.
Just the land, right? And then build.
Right, or say the offshore rig to start with, and then you do the refinery, and then you do the LNG pipeline and all of those kinds of things. And the reason you do it that way is because then you get your field sales force starting to use it. They get feedback, and now they've got buy-in and part of the process as well. So you're not biting off this multi-million-dollar thing that's going to take 2 years.
So what have been the efficiencies that you gain or see as a result of utilizing software like this?
So there's really a number of different efficiencies, but the biggest one is reduction in sales cycle. When customers get to see exactly what they need to see early on in the process, their sales cycles are dramatically reduced because they don't have to do all of that extraneous research on their own. I was talking to actually a physician over the weekend who was saying that they were involved in buying a big medical device for their hospital, and it took them 5 months to make a decision between 2 competitors because they had to go through every step with each one of these competitors. And what this kind of a capability does is it allows you to accelerate that process and answer all of their questions in the comfort of their own offices quickly.
Yeah, because otherwise you would have had to take them out of the hospital to a place or get the thing there, schedule the time, and do a lot of those things. And even that back and forth are real killers for you.
They are.
Did you see the sales side of it, though, first, just because that was the shortest pole in the tent for you to get to? Because I see the other applications I think are really important as well.
Well, I think there's economies of scale in terms of marketing expense, and then the training and the customer support as well. The reason that those tend to follow is because the drivers for the budgets usually are the shortest path to revenue, right?
Right.
So whatever in a company can accelerate revenue or can make sales more efficient,
always the best.
That's where people are going to start.
They put the money down first.
They do, and then the rest of the organization piggybacks off that initial investment, so they don't have to build this over and over again.
So what are the vertical applications or industries you typically see that are involved here?
So key ones would be high-tech data center kind of equipment, the Cisco's, the IBM's, the Dell's, those kinds of companies.
So the people making equipment or systems that you're going to have deployed.
In a data center. The second one would be scientific equipment, big lab equipment that's very expensive. You can't ship this stuff around very easily. very complex and very hard to differentiate again, even if you've got a customer looking at it. Third one would be medical devices. And then big industrial equipment. Think about these pieces of equipment that's the size of this room, this building.
Or the building, yeah.
Exactly. And how do you actually demonstrate that? Or how do you convince or convey your value differentiators when they all kind of look the same and customers are not going to be able to go out to an Alaskan pipeline on a whim to get to see what it is.
Oh, even I can see engineering, construction, and a whole host.
Big turbines.
If you could give one piece of advice to C-suite leaders out there about this type of technology, what would it be?
I would recommend that rather than doing the things that you've been used to doing, which is brochures, PowerPoints, videos, the static things where you're making presentations to your customer, change that dynamic, create a new paradigm of involving the customer in every step of your process. That interaction, you know, the ancient Chinese had a saying that said, if you tell me, I'll forget. If you show me, I'll remember. If you involve me, I will understand. What we want to do as executives is get our customers to understand our value. And the only way we're going to do that is to get them involved early on in the process. So brochures don't do it, the videos and the PowerPoints don't do it. It's the getting people involved in the interaction. And however you do that, get your customers involved early on in the process and surround them with interactivity on the websites, in the sales meetings, at the trade shows, everywhere you have customer touch points. That's where you want to be involved directly with them.
You make me want to go out and design something so that I can go and do this with the software.
Anytime you want, we're just down the road. You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Well, we need to run because now we have one of my favorite speakers ever, and Adam's going to come up and introduce him. Ladies and gentlemen, please give Gavin a round of applause. I thank you very much.
Thank you.